Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is the second day of the second national meeting on advanced oxidation processes, and we continue with the conferences. And today we have the next invited speaker, carried out by Professor Jorge Gabriel Vázquez Arenas. And allow me read some about the resume of Professor. Okay, Jorge Vázquez Arenas earned his PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Waterloo in Canada. Following his doctoral studies, he worked as a research engineer at the Electrical Integration and Control Laboratory of General Motors in Berlin, US. Since 2021, he has been a full-time professor at the Center for Linear Production of the National Polytechnic Institute, Mexico. In 17, he was awarded as an Erasmus Mundus fellowship as a visiting professor at the Laboratory of Reactivity and Solid State Chemistry at the University of Picardy, Jules Verne in Amiens, France. I don't know, it is okay. It is well pronounced. Dr. Vázquez Arenas has authored several papers in JCR Index journals, one book, and 12 books chapters. He holds 5 granted patents, and his research has received more than 4,000 citation, X-Index 38. He currently serves as associated editor of Discovery Nano, Springer Nature, and Energy Exploration and Exploitation, and has served as guest editor of a special issue of Electrochimica Acta from Elsevier. He is currently a level 3 member of Mexico's National System of Researchers, SNI. He has supervised 12 PhD, 22 master degree, and 12 undergraduate theses. His research activities have included leadership of 7 projects founded by CONACYT, now CIDETEQ, 1 international project in collaboration with the US Army and Universidad Andrés Bello, Chile, and 6 industry-sponsored projects. His research interests focus on energy conversion and storage, electrochemical system, corrosion and electrodeposition, advanced oxidation processes, obviously, and electrochemical technologies for wastewater treatment. In addition, Dr. Vázquez Arenas serves as an accredited evaluator and monitor for CIDETEQ, CIDETEQ, Mexico City, MINCIT, Argentina, and the government of Peru. He is also a reviewer for 58 international peer-reviewed journals published by major scientific publishers. So, as you can see, the preparation and professional development of Professor Jorge is really very huge. And today, he will present the presentation can hybrid advanced oxidation processes based on active chlorine be efficient to treat municipal wastewater UV 254 photoassisted electrochemical processes. So, Professor, the plateau is all of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. After changing from room and twice a pointer, we are finally set, hopefully with lots of energy to listen to this talk. And before starting, I would like to tell you that the talk will split into 2 sections. The first one will be covering more of the development we are currently conducting in material science to develop electrocatalysis for active chlorine production. This is at the laboratory scale. And the second portion of the presentation will be covering more the performance of the UV 254 for assisted electrochemical process to tackle the degradation of emerging contaminants in municipal wastewater. Okay, I will briefly go through this introductory section. We know that water stress is worldwide growing, and due to many factors, mainly the population is growing, climate change, and well, this is causing huge enhancements of the water stress. And you can see that by 2040, many regions will be facing water stress and depletion of water supply in a very extremely high level. And the water stress is basically an index showing the ratio between the water we are demanding over the water that is renewed by natural sources or artificial sources. And at the local level, Mexico is not doing well, and this is due to many factors that I'm telling you later. But we can see in this map that by 2050, many of the regions, particularly at the north, at the central part of Mexico, are going to have high exposure to water stress. So we're basically running out of water, and we are also contaminating lots of water, and this is mainly causing these problems. The south part is not having many problems, probably because of many surface bodies of water that are having rivers, lakes, and so on, and also because of the population in this part of Mexico is low compared to the north and the central part. And the causes for water stress, particularly at Mexico City, and we are focusing on Mexico City because it's the largest population practically in Latin America. So if we are all able to solve the problem at Mexico City, we can replicate that in other regions in Latin America. And these particular problems are associated with Latin American and other third world countries. And the main ones, because there are many other causes for water stress, is that there's a depletion of reserves, like Cutzamala, close to Mexico City, overexploitation of wells. There are also many leaks. This is responsible of the 40% of the water losses at Mexico City. Probably this is not directly related to water treatment, but it's also a problem that needs to be solved in the next years. And these two are particularly directly related or correlated. The main one, water population. This is important and is very related to the inefficient of wastewater treatment plants, and also there are few wastewater treatment plants that are able to remove most of the contaminants. We are interested in recalcitrant contaminants. This is because even when in Mexico City, most of the wastewater treatment plants are not able to remove biodegradable compounds, recalcitrant contaminants are even a worse problem or a worse situation. And these recalcitrant contaminants include microplastic, industrial chemicals, endocrine disruptors, and pharmaceutical and personal care products. So basically, these compounds are organic based and they are very stable. Well, we know some of the chemical structure of these compounds, and The problem is that they are also in very low concentration, and these recalcitrant contaminants have been evaluated and have been detected around all the metropolitan region of Mexico City. So they're present, and they have been at least for more than 40 years. So they can also bioaccumulate or accumulate in soil and water. So we need to find a solution for remove these recalcitrant contaminants in water, and this needs to be coupled at the end or in a treatment in the plants. So how can we tackle this problem? And I have to say that at least nowadays, there are 2 treatments that have been identified with a lot of potential to remove or destroy these recalcitrant contaminants. And these are included in the advanced oxidation process, which are basically forming a high oxidizing species or agent that can destroy or can basically remove the bonds in the organic compounds. And the 2 methods that have been identified with lots of potential, this is from a sustainable standpoint, are catalytic decomposition of ozone, and the other is the Fenton technology. So basically, these 2 treatment methods that have been extensively explored, well, there are some parts in the world that are nowadays implementing these methods, but we also believe that there are some hybrid methods that, if they are developed to a certain point, they can also have the potential to treat the recalcitrant compounds. So there are many different types of advanced oxidation process. There are chemical-based, energy-based, and hybrid methods. So I will be focusing on the talk in these hybrid methods. And particularly, as you saw in the title of the talk, I will be delivering the speech about active chlorine. And why active chlorine? Active chlorine has many pros and cons to apply the technology for wastewater treatment. Well, some of the advantages are that you need a low overpotential to form the active chlorine. Different from other oxidants, the active chlorine is very stable over a long time, and it's an easy generation. This is a technology that has been established for more than 5 decades ago. It's not toxic, the pure active chlorine, where you also have to consider what is forming when it's reacting with organic matter. And you can form that with ruthenium-based anodes. Ruthenium is not cheap, but it's cheaper compared to VDD or platinum or any other electrode. So from that perspective, it's considered a affordable electrode. And also there are some drawbacks, and they are related with there's no mineralization. If you only use active chlorine, the electrode composition, there is a very strong electrode composition dependence to form either certain or a different species of active chlorine. The oxygen evolution reaction acts like a parasitic reaction during the formation of this oxidant. And if you have humic components, or you can form thialomethanes, organic chloride compounds, that these are really toxic, and you have to basically implement a complex chemical analysis to detect these compounds. there's also a pH reliance, which is not very good when you are basically trying to scale up this process because the pH control is not cheap. And you also need like a reagent to form the active chlorine chloride concentration, which sometimes is not easy to find in the wastewater composition. So what's active chlorine? So I would like to show you this fraction pH diagram. So basically, active chlorine can be considered like a fresh chlorine species that you are forming on an electrode surface. So that's going to differ from that hypochloric acid that was formed like a month, 2 or 3 months ago, and you are basically finding that in the bleacher. So this is a fresh species that you are basically forming to destroy in the same in situ the emerging contaminants. And we're interested in this region. Basically, the oxidation capacity established by the standard electrode potential is very important because it's not the same like forming a species with a 1.5 volts of potential compared to 0.5 or 0.8 species. So that's the reason why we need to form hypochlorous acid, or hypochlorite ion. So this pH dependence is really important because there's some literature, which I'm not saying that it's wrong, but are saying that you can form chlorine basically in alkaline or neutral conditions, which is not possible according to the aqueous solution equilibrium. Okay. But more important is that if you use 1.5 volts to try to destroy organic compounds or emerging contaminants, which are very stable, which are basically presenting benzene rings, are really stable, and you need at least 2 volts. So you are 0.5 volts far from that region. So that's the reason why the active chlorine has been envisaged to react either with chemical species like iron or UV-VC radiation. So basically you are doing a homolytic reaction to transform the hypochloric acid or the active chlorine into hydroxyl radical plus a chlorine radical. So you're basically forming in this hybrid method 3 different oxidizing agents: the active chlorine, the hydroxyl radical, and the chlorine radical. And you can do that with, as I said, different methods. The first one is UVC irradiation. The second one is only like a Fenton light reaction. So hypochlorous acid plus the iron 2. So basically forming that's going to oxidize the iron into iron 3 and forming the hydroxyl radical from the decomposition of the active chlorine. And the same if you concomitantly irradiate and add the chemical species of iron. So these are the 3 variations to transform the hypochlorous acid. So what are the efforts we are currently doing at the laboratory scale to design new electrocatalysts for active chlorine production? As I previously mentioned, the state-of-the-art electrocatalyst is the ruthenium-based anode. It's not, it's an affordable electrode, but you can reduce the price of this electrode by incorporating cheaper metals, or metalloids, sorry, like bismuth, cobalt, and manganese. Particularly manganese is really important because the abundance on Earth's crust. So this is a very interesting paradigm that was established by a theoretical group performing DFT calculations. So what these guys are saying is that basically on a ruthenium-based anode supported on titanium, the active material of the active coating is not ruthenium. It's basically the titanium. So they are saying that the titanium matrix, sorry, there's a mistake here. It's not anastas and rutils. It can be any phase of titanium oxide, well, with similar structure or chemical structure to the 110 ruthenium oxide. And so this titanium oxide is basically providing the active sites to absorb the chlorine on before the water. So you can form the active chlorine. So basically the ruthenium oxide, which is acting like a metallic bonding or bonding type, so it's acting like a dopant. It's not the active site. So they perform these calculations with more than 32 metals. And they conclude that there's reason to establish that basically the titanium is providing all the activity of the of these dimensional stable anodes. So now we can say that there is a myth that titanium oxide adds a side-dimensional inner substrate separating the active sites of ruthenium oxides. So we are departing from that idea or that premise to develop new electrodes. At least if you are able to reduce the mass loading of the ruthenium oxide, well, that's probably a good starting. Okay, so then we using a hydrothermal method to synthesize. So to synthesize bismuth oxide, mix it with ruthenium oxide, and the same with cobalt oxide, manganese oxide with ruthenium oxide. This is pretty much the structural characterization and the morphological characterization performing by grazing angle, X-ray diffraction. So this is pretty much to find the phase format after the synthesis. So it's important to mention that if you use a chloride salt, you end up with a binary oxide like cobalt or manganese oxide. These are binary oxide mixed with ruthenium. They are not necessarily forming a solid solution. They can be acting like objective materials close each other. But if you use acetate or if you use nitrate salt to form the metals, you end up with a ternary oxide. So this is the reason why this is not a binary oxide. Okay, so on the right-hand side of the slide, I'm showing this SEM micrographs for each of these three electrodes. On the top, there is the ternary bismuth oxide. On the middle, the cobalt oxide with ruthenium, of course, and on the bottom, the manganese oxide with ruthenium oxide. Okay, so we are interested in the performance. So this is a basic electrochemical characterization doing cycle voltammetry in different media. So on the inset, we are showing the sodium sulfate analysis of the electrolyte. So this is pretty much if you are forming the active chlorine, you won't see a reducing peak after you switch the potential. Once that you start from the OCP scanning on the positive direction, you start oxidizing all the species with low activation energy or over potential. And then there's only occurring in the sodium sulfate solution, the oxygen evolution reaction, because these electrodes are not active to reduce oxygen, because it's not a simple reaction from the kinetic standpoint. So you won't see a reducing peak on this part when there's no chloride in the electrolyte. Then when you switch the electrolyte into sodium chloride, you again start from the OCB around this region, then you go towards more positive direction, and then you switch the potential in the reducing region, towards the reducing region. And then you will see a peak, which is revealing that you form active chlorine during the first scan. So pretty much this is like a fingerprint of the active chlorine without and with chloride in the solution, just using cycle voltammetry. Then you perform a simple iodometry analysis. This is to detect the amount of chlorine oxidants that you are forming. So basically from this plot on the right, we are observing that the ruthenium oxide mixed with manganese oxide is forming more active chlorine after different production times. Basically, cobalt and the bismuth oxide are very close to each other. So of course, well, you have to perform more analysis to find the reasons why manganese oxide is forming more active chlorine. One of the reasons, this is basically to determine the EXA, which is the electrochemical active surface area, also using cycle voltammetry at different scan rates in a solution with 5 millimolars of potassium ferricyanide plus 1 molar of potassium chloride. So the conclusion from this slide is that we found that ruthenium oxide mixed with manganese oxide presents a 5.29 square centimeters of active area. Lower areas were found for bismuth oxide and for cobalt oxide. So pretty much the iodometry analysis is correlated that probably the active area, the larger active area of manganese oxide is responsible of that active chlorine production. I have to say that the nominal composition during the synthesis was similar for ruthenium and the metals. So also additional analysis for different compositions are needed to find if these are the good nominal compositions for these electrodes, but that's further on study. So the degradation, basically this is a laboratory scale test, and this is for degrading 5 pharmaceutical compounds. The steam of these pharmaceutical compounds arise from the fact that these are the, how can I say, most frequently found pharmaceutical and emerging contaminants in the wastewater of Mexico City. So there are at least from 20 to 25 exploration studies for recalcitrant contaminants in real wastewater, particularly municipal wastewater. I'm not talking or dealing with industrial wastewater, which is really different in composition, but they consistently found these pharmaceutical compounds: sulfometaxazole, carbamazepine, sulfhydroxyl, and ciprofloxacin. And this slide is showing the analysis for only photolysis, which is basically UVB irradiation. So this is the absorbance or the UVB spectrometry analysis. So the contaminants, well, most of the peaks of these contaminants are around this Y peak. So the degradation of these contaminants is not important if you compare with the only electrochemical oxidation. This is basically only using active chlorine. So the transformation is more important compared to the photolysis. But if you couple the active chlorine with the UV the irradiation, basically the transformation, most of the contaminants are mineralized. On the right-hand side, these are the chromatography analysis, and is showing almost the same compared to the spectrometry. The degradation and the mineralization is more important in the hybrid method. And when you perform scavenger testing, you find that the isopropanol testing with that scavenger is basically the degradation inhibits when in the presence of isopropanol. So we can conclude this this is a small reaction mechanism that basically you form once you form on the surface of the electrode the active chlorine, that's the source, and then of course there's a mixing and forced convection in the reactor, and that's spreading the active chlorine in the homogeneous phase. In that region, the irradiation is transforming basically the active chlorine into hydroxyl radicals and chlorine radicals, and those are responsible for this degradation. So basically you have three different oxidation species. I will talk later that most of the advanced oxidation process using electrocatalysis, you start the testing, and then after 1 hour, the pH of the solution is rising. And that's basically because of two reasons. Then the depletion of the protons because of the hydrogen evolution reaction on the cathode, and of course of the oxygen evolution, sometimes providing hydroxide ions. So that's, if you recall the thermodynamic diagram, that's not very good, because if you transform, so if you rise the pH during the treatment, you basically switch from active chlorine, the hypochloric acid, into the hypochlorous ion, which are having different oxidation capacity. And also you don't want to transform this with the radiation if the pH is rising, because then you don't form the hydroxyl radical, you form the oxygen radical. So I think the microphone is gone. Okay, now it's back. So this is not good. Then it's important to control the pH because of that reason. I will show some experiments later on. These are the total organic carbon analysis. So for analyzing the mineralization, and you see similar findings compared to the degradation. So the hybrid method, UV 254 photo. So has a better performance compared to the single oxidation process or the single photolysis. So this is the percentage of mineralization. This was only using the electrode forming the highest amount of active chlorine between those three I was showing. So on the right side, the chromatography analysis showing similar findings. I'm not going deep into this analysis because we are not interested to analyze or accounting for the intermediate species of this degradation. We pretty much need to completely degrade most of the emerging contaminants. Okay, this is a bioassay analysis. This is a real problem, and I can tell you that if you are going to perform bioassay analysis, pretty much if you use plants, It's not good to use plants because like sativa, lettuce, because of the carboxylic acids, which are the end of the degradation process, are basically acidifying the pH of the solution. So you will see that the plants are not growing because of the carboxylic acids, but you are really removing the toxicity of the solution. So that's the reason why it's better to use this. It's like CBOT, like Daphnia magna, sorry. And of course, like any other active chlorine process, you need to not storage, but perform a dehydration to remove the remaining active chlorine. This is basically killing all the Daphnia magna. So, and that's the reason because of the concentration remaining for the active chlorine. I will show better testing once that we show the analysis for the degradation of the municipal wastewater. All this testing was performed at the laboratory scale. Then when you jump into the bench scale to use real wastewater, so basically what I'm showing here is that we sample some influent wastewater of the San Juan Izhuatepec wastewater treatment plant at Tlalnepantla, Mexico City. So because this is the influent wastewater, you cannot, well, you don't want to use expensive oxidizing agents to remove or to destroy biodegradable matter. You need to perform a primary treatment method. And of course, it's a good advice to use a biological method before going into the advanced oxidation process. In this case, we perform a coagulation flocculation process, which is very efficient to remove most of the biodegradable compounds. And then once that you have the discharge of that primary method, you connect that or plug that into the electrocatalytic process assisted with photolysis. This is similar to the one I just showed, but in the bench scale. This is a 5-liter reactor, and you can develop that for larger volumes. Okay, and the municipal wastewater was fortified with 20 ppm each of these pharmaceutical compounds. These are the same that we just showed for the laboratory scale analysis. These are most frequently found emerging contaminants in the wastewater of Mexico City. And this is the appearance of the wastewater. And of course, also stinks a little bit. The first study was if we are using the correct electrochemical reactor to produce the active chlorine. This was conducted with a colleague from CIDETEQ and connecting modeling with experiments, and basically to design the channel of the electrochemical reactor. So the study concludes that the typical FMO1LC or press reactor, which is frequently used in many studies in the literature for different electrochemical reactions, is not the best. So basically you can't use a better channel, and the channel is, you don't need rocket science to design this channel, because what we did in this study was connecting a surface design with a model. So basically the surface design was providing at least from 16 to 27 different geometries. Those geometries were tested in silico, so we didn't perform the experiment. We tested that in a model. So pretty much the model with the surface design is closely similar to design of experiments, and that provide that we design a new channel, which is called here G4, which is producing more active chlorine production compared to the, I am not saying the commercial, because there are other commercial devices for this type of electrochemical reaction, but this is one famous filter press reactor. And the performance of that reactor was here. So the concentration of active chlorine in the new design was much better. And this is the model. It's the results of the experiments are very close. So you can see this rise of the active chlorine production. And here at the bottom, this is the comparison between the optimized channel, which are these blue circles, and the FMO1 channel reactor, which is pretty much here. So we use this new channel for the electrochemical reactor to produce the active chlorine, and then couple, of course, with the photolysis. So this is a comparison of chromatograms for the raw wastewater. This is basically 1/100 dilution from the influent of the wastewater treatment plant on the left, and on the right, the fortified raw wastewater. We tried to perform mass spectrometry coupled with chromatography, but because of the complex matrix of the wastewater, it was not possible, also because of the possible contamination of the column in the chromatography. That's the reason why we use classical chromatography. Sorry, high resolution chromatography, liquid chromatography. But you can see from the comparison of the retention times that the pharmaceutical compounds are found in the real wastewater. So if you see here, sulfametoxazole, this is a similar peak. This is without fortification. And also the ciprofloxacin, this is the peak for ciprofloxacin. So there are similar retention peaks between these two chromatograms. So of course you don't need to fortify if you are performing a study at the pilot scale. So this is the testing of the coagulation. I'm expediting this part. So the coagulation was really good to remove the organic matter, the EC2 oxidized matter. But basically, the coagulation flocculation is not removing a significant portion of the recalcitrant contaminants or the pharmaceutical compounds. You can see here the comparison between, this is the initial and after the coagulation flocculation test. This is the comparison between the different conditions of the treatments for the hybrid method and photolysis. You can see that with photolysis, the peak is not evolving. Basically, you have similar absorbance displayed at the spectrometry. Once that you start performing the hybrid method, the peaks, I'm not identifying any specific. We just want to completely banish all the peaks in the UV-Vis spectrometry. So most of the peaks are rapidly evolving after 60 minutes treatment. This is a treatment with 0.2 molars of sodium chloride, 30 milliamps per square centimeter of applied current density, and this is the natural pH of this electrolyte. And this is a better performance. You can see that here that after 60 minutes, you still have some absorbance related to the emerging contaminants. But in this one, most of that peak is almost gone. And that's also because of the lowering the pH into 4.5, and of course with the control of the pH. The other conditions are similar. The summary of the characterization of this is the column of the influent after coagulation and after the electrochemical process. This is only with electrochemistry, without photolysis or without irradiation of the active chlorine. And you can see that the total organic carbon evolved from 959 to 213. And well, of course, there are other components of the wastewater that are also varying. And this is ones that you perform with the hybrid method, the UV254 assisted electrochemical process. And you can see here the total organic carbon, of course, is not the same because the samples were at different dates. And this evolved approximately by 96% of the total organic carbon. Okay, from 1184 to 51. So you can see the clear difference in the total organic carbon, and of course also the chemical oxygen demand drops from 584 into 9, or almost 10, which is good, comparing that 60 minutes was the lasting of the treatment. Okay, and of course, when you are performing treatment method or any other, you have to do the calculation for the energy consumption. And well, I have to say these are different conditions. This the third line or row of this table is showing the treatment without fortification. So you basically mineralize around 95 or close to 95% of the original compounds, all the compounds, most of the compounds, sorry. And if you compare with the fortification, which is the fifth row, it's very close. It's also 95.65. So most of the mineralization or the top removal is around 95, which is not bad. But if you do the calculations for the energy consumption, these two are around, of course, using the cell voltage, the energy consumed by the pumping, and so on, you end up with values of 40, 42 for without fortification and with fortification. And those values of energy consumption in kilowatts hour per gram of top removed is not good, because it's at least 2 orders of magnitude what the industry is demanding to implement that process. So this is something that needs to be considerably improved in order to scale up the process, because it's of course demanding a lot of energy because of the use of the lamps and because of the use of the energy applying the electric field in the electrochemical reactor. Okay, there was also the performance of the scavenger testing. This is the reaction mechanism. It's very similar to what I just showed in the laboratory scale analysis, and basically forming the hydroxyl radical and the chlorine radical, sorry, from the reaction between hypochlorous acid plus the UV254 irradiation. And that's, of course, depending on the pH. Okay, this is just the last slide, and I'm showing that the biotoxicity assays of Daphnia magna. This is the these are some pictures of the control group. So basically, you have to track the different physiological parameters of the Daphnia magna in order to establish the biological damage during the contact with the treated water. Well, these are some just physiological parameters. And I can say that if you treat the wastewater after half an hour and you put that water in contact with the Daphnia magna, there's no important mortality, even varying the concentration. But once that you perform the treatment longer than half an hour, the mortality is really important. This is for 1 hour and this is for 2 hours. So basically you are building up active chlorine and this is not good. So this is the reason why there are some recommendations at the end of the presentation. But well, there are some solutions that need to be implemented that have been successful in the literature. So in summary, that's more like a perspective. Well, yeah, it's possible to remove recalcitrant pollutants from municipal wastewater using the hybrid methods, UV254 photoassisted electrochemical process using electrogenerated active chlorine. However, the advanced oxidation process requires shorter treatment time. You need to drop at least by half of the total time to probably 30 minutes. And you also need to lower the concentration. This is a problem because this is pretty much providing the ionic conductivity. So you need high current density, then you also need to high the conductivity of the sodium chloride. The wastewater is not a good ionic conductive solution. Also, affordable electrocatalysts need to be envisaged. So all these electrocatalysts that I just showed need further improvement in order to be cheaper and in order to enlarge all the area of the electrodes. The pilot level to account for hydrodynamics and irradiation distribution. This is pretty much focused on the reactor. So we need studies using mass transfer and irradiation transfer to see the performance of the reactor. Coupling biologic methods as pre and post treatments can solve or can polish the solutions that are coming from the advanced oxidation process. So basically to remove chlorine and also as a pretreatment method to drop the chemical oxygen demand and of course the biochemical oxygen demand. Aeration methods probably need to be implemented to remove the remaining chlorine. And of course, the trialometans analysis need to be performed because I didn't say, but well, we didn't detect that. We didn't measure, of course, but most of these hybrid methods report that trialometans and different organochlorine compounds are formed during the hybrid method, not during photolysis, but it's 100% sure that are formed during the hybrid method. So we also need to detect this in order to fulfill the requirements of the environmental laws. And just some acknowledgements for funding and of course of the research group. And to you, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation, Professor Jorge. And we are really in time to open the session of questions and answers. So if you want to ask to Professor Jorge, just do it. Questions, doubts, mentors, complaints? No. No, it's okay. Anyone? Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was very interesting, and I'm going to ask you about the optimization of the reactor. I don't know if you mentioned the name of the software you used for the optimization, and the optimization was focused more on the geometry. You mentioned that there were like 16 to 27 geometries, but I don't know if exactly the shape of the reactor or the inlet geometry or the turbulence was optimized, and if the optimization was more focused on the hydrodynamics or they were taking in count other parameters. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. That's interesting. So what we were doing here is that, oh, well, first the software was console, and in console you can couple CFD, so basically Navier-Stokes solution for fluid motion, coupling that with mass transfer, so basically the diffusion convection equation in transient conditions. So that's the model, because you even if you impose a low flow rate like 1 liter per minute, of course you will have that with 5 liters per minute. You have micro turbulence in some regions of the channel, so that's the reason why you also need to implement some corrections for micro turbulence, which is the RANS model. I think there are different models, but this is the most famous. So that was selected, and then what it's similar to the design of experiment. You depart from the original geometry of the commercial reactor or the FMO reactor. Then those are your original geometries in length, width, and height. Then the reactor, you connect that for the screening parameters in the design of experiment. So basically, for instance, the flow rate, you have a range between 1 and 5. Then you put that into one factor, you have at least 4 factors, and then the software randomly, well, yes, it's randomly, but well, there are some deterministic algorithms, and they provide the conditions that you need to analyze. For instance, one experiment has to be performed at 1.5 liters per minute plus a variation of 20% of the height, a variation of 5% of the width, and a variation of 10% of the length. So pretty much the software, and that software, you can use any software for statistical analysis, is Minitab. You can use also a Statistica, and the software is running the experiments that you have to do. Of course, you have to do that in the experimental level. What we did was that connecting to the simulations. With the geometry, those experiments were run. Of course, you need the kinetic part or the kinetic contribution. You have to connect the mass transfer with the CFD, and of course, Butler-Bulmer under those conditions. Okay.
Okay. More questions? Okay, go ahead.
Jorge, thank you so much for such an interesting talk. I was wondering how was the process to select the micropollutants that you're presenting when you are working with real wastewater?
Sorry, the real contaminants, what?
The real contaminants.
How they were detected, or how?
How you decide to detect that? Yes, because in a real wastewater you have a huge amount of contaminant and other molecules that also are in a major concentration. So why you select those instead of others?
Okay, okay, yeah, that's also a good question. I mentioned that these were collected from at least 25 different studies that were conducted or carried out in the wastewater of Mexico City. That involves the south, the central part, the north, even some close regions in Hidalgo, yeah, all the metropolitan area. And they consistently report these 4 pharmaceutical compounds. Of course, you have other, these are the higher, well, sorry, these were the highest concentration for the emerging contaminant. Because you can say, oh, paracetamol is, you are probably taking more frequently paracetamol than carbamazepine. But But you have also to consider that in the under the external or outer conditions for the wastewater, paracetamol is more easily degraded by the solar irradiation and of course the biological contribution from the bacteria. So we basically end up with this for the highest concentration and the most recalcitrant or most stable compound. Those studies were not performed by our research group. These are coming from other groups.
Okay, more questions? Anyone? No? Okay. So thank you very much, Professor. There is no more questions. So we want to finish your participation with this a little bit person. Thank you very much for being here. And is there someone to take up a photo? I really took several, but Professor wants a photo. Photograph, picture. Okay, no. Okay. Bernardo is here. Bernardo saved the day. Okay. Right. Thank you so much. Okay. Don't abandon the classroom. Yet I said classroom because this is a classroom. We have a little surprise for you. It is a talk carried out by Professor Stortini. She will talk about the postdoctoral fellowship Marie Curie. This is an information for all of the person that wants to apply to these postdoctoral opportunities.
Good morning, everyone. Again here, and I want to introduce just a few minutes to introduce you. Marie Curie's Logonskoa postdoctoral fellowship. They are European fellowship, and my university, the university where I work, is one of the top 10 in Europe for the quantity of engagements in Marie Curie, and the first in Italy for the numbers of person that has accepted inside our university. Just in the last call, we obtained 19 fellowship in our university. This is a very great opportunity. And of course, I suggest if you want to follow the research career, to try it, because it is a very good occasion. Imagine you can write your project, be independent thinking, if you have an idea, propose, and of course, you can also construct a network inside of your project, because, for example, one of the possibilities is have two partners for work, University Ca' Foscari and another one in Europe. But you can read better inside of the rules if you want to know better. Ca' Foscari, as I told you, is the first in Italy as the number of Marie Curie fellowship obtained from Europe, and of course in the top 10. The amount is what the amount you see there, and of course it let us receive many nationalities inside our university, and of course has a very great network of students around the world. Also, the quantity of Marie Curie alumni that had received the fellowship in the past is very consistent, and it is a topic, no a topic, it is a group of persons that strong work to obtain the best for engagement of new students, new postdocs, excuse me. Ca' Foscari, it is young university. If you think about Padova, for example, Padova born in 1222, very, very old university, or Bologna, a little bit younger, but just a little bit. Ca' Foscari is a young university, and as a young university, it is very strong in new ideas and very enthusiastic to enroll people that are very interested. When you submit a Marie Curie project, it is something that you have to manage yourself. You don't have the professor back you. You have to have a good idea. You have to contact the good professors, good mentoring group, and of course you have to do as well as possible your work. More than 150 years in academic tradition and innovation, and you taking account that Ca' Foscari board as High School of Commerce, important also language, but with a rule in society, with an application, of course. Why choose Ca' Foscari for a Marie Curie Skłodowska fellowship? First, is European excellent in our in the context of European community. It is a gateway to RC success financial support. You imagine that RC, it is European Research Council. This is the top level of the fellowship. After Marie Curie, the top level it is. If you obtain an IRC fellowship, you can be, of course, in the top level of the scientists in Europe. But in fact, Marie Curie gives you the opportunity to apply also for RC in a second time. Career development. It is a good appointment to have a network, a contact for future. If you don't want to be a research, you want to apply in the industry and so on, you can construct your network inside. It is dedicated to support tailored training programs, specialized to support guidance and competitive grant application. We have a very, very strong personal group of persons that work very hard to support people that want to apply. And then strong research community. As I told you, there are 240 Marie Curie Skłodowska alumni in interdisciplinary collaborations, of course, not only in science, also in other kind of studies. This is the group of persons that obtained the last call of Marie Curie, as I told you, 19 persons. And of course, how to apply, you can go in the homepage of Marie Curie in our website of Ca' Foscari, and you can write directly to this email. People are available to answer you, of course, about your curiosity or your request of information and so on. Of course, you have to have very clear what you want to do to make a question. But in every case, if you have any doubt or any request of information, please write to this email. This slide, I dedicated this slide to two women that led possible or inspired the programs that had their name. The first one, Sofia Corradi, she died last year, and she was the promoter of Erasmus program, was a woman, is a woman. And why she had this idea? Years and years ago, when she was young, student, of course, in university, students in this time want to go out like you do now. If you want to go outside your country, go in some lab, obtain some experience. She went to United States and spent a period there. When she came back, her university didn't recognize the work of her outside. It was for her something like a very bad thing. And she made as much as possible after her degree to work to do as much as possible to let students be recognized for their experience outside. The name of this program has been given for her, and her was a very active professor that inspired an educator, a visionary educator, architect of opportunities, a woman. Be active. And of course, who don't know who is Marie Curie, with 2 Nobel Prizes, first in physics and the second one in chemistry. One of the 5 persons that won 2 Nobel Prizes. And she, of course, inspired this kind of program I illustrate you now. And it is a very good program for opportunities. And if you are inspired to follow research career and you want to improve your experience, I suggest you to try it. And if you want to check in our website, you can see some publications like success stories from the research management community, for example. You can see some documents that can help you giving some information, of course. And again, if you want to have information, please, individual funding office, Marie Curie at unive.et. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Maria. Any questions about the program? No? Probably you can ask to Professor Stortini during the coffee break,
Yes,
and in Spanish also.
Yes, of course. If they have, but I asked at my office, and they say if some people has or want to require some information, they can write directly to us here in this email, of course.
Perfect. So thank you so much for the kind information. And sorry, do you have a question? Okay. Okay. And in this moment, we end the transmission to the socials, and we will continue in the afternoon. But in here, we continue with another surprise. So our sponsor will explain us about the products to all of you. Okay, in Spanish, obviously, to be more easy the transmission, the communication. Okay, thank you so much.
Hola, muy buenos días. Me presento, Diana García. Soy especialista de producto de la empresa Anjover Instrumentación Científica. Nosotros somos proveedores de gran parte de instituciones de investigación del país. Y bueno, pues el día de hoy estamos participando conjuntamente con ustedes en este evento que hizo el favor de invitarnos el doctor Hugo Olvera, que muy amable nos invitó, también la doctora Sandy, que ya está hasta allá al fondo. Pues vamos a comenzar. Antes de presentar los productos que nosotros manejamos, equipos y soluciones para ustedes, me gustaría escucharlos. El evento se trata de procesos avanzados de oxidación. Entonces, díganme, ¿cuáles son los retos que ustedes se enfrentan ahorita en el estudio de estos procesos? ¿Alguien? Ok, aquí comenta la doctora que identificación de moléculas, identificación y cuantificación. ¿Algún otro reto al que se enfrenten aquellas personas que trabajen en áreas de fotocatálisis, electroquímica?
Anyone? Otra persona.
Me dicen caracterización de materiales. Bueno, la información que yo tengo es que ustedes se enfrentan a una mayor eficiencia en la determinación de gradación de contaminantes, ¿es correcto? ¿O les estoy mintiendo? Perfecto, más o menos. Menor consumo energético también es lo que ustedes buscan. Catalizadores más activos y comprender precisamente los mecanismos de transición electrónica. Es correcto. Entonces, dentro de los procesos que ustedes estudian, gran parte de ustedes aplican las técnicas electroquímicas. El día de hoy nosotros vamos a presentar las soluciones de la marca Cortes. La marca Cortes es una empresa china en la cual Anjover ha representado ya durante 6 años acá en México. Bueno, ellos desde el año 1995 vienen desarrollando diversas soluciones enfocando justamente en apoyar a los investigadores, brindando, realizar técnicas electroquímicas avanzadas. Y bueno, ellos a través de, por ejemplo, que han, desde 2023 ya te llevan su 5ª generación de usar corrientes de solución con mayor alcance, pues podemos comentarlo al fabricante y estamos abiertos a la posibilidad de desarrollar algo a sus necesidades. Cortes como tal, pues ha atendido gran parte del mercado de estudios en corrosión, energía, materiales de energía y electrocatálisis. Cuenta con una gama de equipos, desde equipos portátiles hasta equipos de sobremesa para su laboratorio. Y también en conjunto dan soluciones para accesorios complementarios, como lo son electrodos de referencia, contraelectrodos y todo lo que ustedes requieren para montar su sistema. En equipos de un solo canal tenemos 3 modelos. Estos 3 modelos incluyen lo que es un módulo de impedancia, que son técnicas que ustedes pueden emplear, sobre todo si realizan técnicas avanzadas. Y tenemos dentro de sus principales características es que alcanzan una corriente de 2 amperes y tenemos la parte del módulo de impedancia de 10 microhertz hasta 1 megahertz. Contamos también con una solución portátil, pues si ustedes quieren ir a hacer evaluación, por ejemplo, en aguas, pueden hacer evaluaciones en campo, medición de corrosión en sitio. Es un equipo muy portable, su peso es de 500 gramos, lo puede manejar vía Bluetooth, la obtención de datos hasta una distancia de 5 metros y posteriormente trabajarlo ya en su PC, los datos obtenidos o directamente desde la aplicación. Ahora, en este año en nuestro catálogo se han integrado 2 nuevos productos, que son los potenciostatos de un solo canal, pero que en este caso van a alcanzar ya un rango de impedancia de hasta 5 MHz. Y el otro producto, que es el modelo CC1350 Pro, alcanza un máximo de corriente de 5 amperes. Esto ya dependiendo de los requerimientos que ustedes tengan. Posteriormente contamos con otros equipos que son los bipotenciostatos, sobre todo para los que realizan técnicas de difusión de hidrógeno, trabajan con el accesorio de disco rotatorio. Estos equipos traen canales independientes, ustedes los pueden trabajar ya sea con módulo de impedancia o sin módulo de impedancia, como ustedes lo gusten configurar. Justamente lo que les mencionaba. Y también tenemos la parte de equipos multicanales. Estos los pueden configurar desde un canal y posteriormente, como ustedes vayan requiriendo, pueden ir incorporando sin ningún problema los demás canales al equipo. Tenemos un módulo de 8, pero si ustedes llegan a requerir en el número de canales, también se pueden configurar sin ningún problema. Y bueno, dentro de las características que les comentaba, pues son módulos expandibles, tenemos canales independientes. Los equipos vienen configurados con un modo flotante que les permite justamente la independencia de estos canales para que no interfiera el ruido de una medición en la siguiente medición, justamente la obtención de los datos sean con el menor ruido posible. El precio, justamente con algunas marcas de la competencia, la verdad es que es muy accesible. Justamente uno de los objetivos de Cortes es brindar estas soluciones a un menor precio. Aquí pueden visualizar ustedes justamente la configuración de lo que les incluye el kit básico en la compra del equipo. Pueden igual configurarlo. Una de las ventajas es que el software es libre, entonces ustedes pueden instalarlos en cualquier computadora que deseen. Generalmente les recomendamos que tengan el Windows más reciente, pero es compatible con el Windows, ¿no? Entonces lo pueden instalar en N computadoras que ustedes deseen. Y bueno, ya lo interesante, ¿qué técnicas les permite realizar? Tenemos las técnicas básicas, como son los OCPs. Tenemos las técnicas electroquímicas, como son las voltametrías, que muchos de ustedes son las que principalmente realizan, y justamente las técnicas de impedancia, que ya son módulos incluidos, como les comento, dentro de los equipos, no tienen ningún costo extra.
¿A qué hora va? ¿Empezar?
Y bueno, también contamos para aquellos que...
¿Preguntas, dudas?
Gracias, buenos días. ¿Tienen acceso a cursos o el software?
Sí, ahorita al final les comento.
Gracias.
Bueno, en las técnicas avanzadas, como les comento, gran ventaja de la que ofrece la marca Cortes es que el módulo de impedancia, a diferencia de otras marcas de la competencia, se las incluye sin ningún costo, a menos que ustedes no las deseen, no las trabajen, no las investiguen, también la podemos omitir. La configuración de electrodos en sus sistemas pueden ir desde 2 hasta 4 electrodos. Tenemos, si ustedes ya han trabajado sus datos en como el ORI, como el ZView, les va a permitir sin ningún problema manejar el software, ya que es intuitivo, muy similar a lo que es el ZView, entonces ahí no tienen ningún problema. Y como les comento, no cuenta con licencia, entonces, ventaja, ustedes pueden hacer ahí modificaciones dependiendo de los requerimientos que ustedes tengan. Esto también es importante, les permite hacer una combinación de test. Ustedes pueden programar en el software si requieren hacer, por ejemplo, una OCP inicial, posteriormente una volta, luego una crono, luego medir impedancia, lo programan, lo configuran en el software, incluso lo pueden dejar corriendo toda la noche y por la mañana recuperan datos para facilitarles el tiempo en la obtención de los datos y ya trabajarlos, o a la vez que están trabajando y corriendo un experimento, posteriormente pueden trabajar con el software de análisis, trabajar sus datos al momento. ¿Así ya? Yo creo que ya.
¿Pueden adelantar la presentación, por favor? Es que se nos acabó la batería. Ahí está, gracias.
Y bueno, dentro de las funciones de análisis les permiten hacer análisis como el circuito equivalente, mode shocking, la calculación de la pseudocapacitancia, les permite hacer caída óhmica, curvas de análisis, activación y pasivación, dentro de muchos más.
Por favor, si le adelantan, que ya se nos acabó la batería de las...
Y bueno, acá les mostramos justamente dentro de las aplicaciones en las cuales se especializa este tipo de soluciones. Electroquímica para la energía, electrocatálisis, corrosión, electroquímica analítica, etcétera. Igualmente tenemos algunos artículos que si llegan a requerir dependiendo del área de aplicación nos las pueden solicitar y con gusto se los compartimos. Justamente vamos a tener algunos datos. Contamos, como les comento, con una base ya de artículos en los cuales, dependiendo de las aplicaciones, ustedes pueden revisar. Son artículos abiertos sin ningún costo.
Pueden adelantar la presentación. Gracias.
Vienen justamente muchos ejemplos de casos de estudio y con qué equipos se han trabajado. Por ejemplo, en el área de sensores, para técnicas de impedancia, justamente con un equipo portátil. Y contamos con la parte de accesorios y celdas, una gran variedad de ellos. Como les comento, tenemos electrodos de referencia, de trabajo contra electrodos. Contamos con soportes para películas delgadas y soporte para polvo, así como kits de polido o se utilizan papel carbón, un iPhone, algún otro producto que lleguen a requerir, con gusto se los podemos cotizar. Igualmente con una gran variedad de celdas. Y bueno, la marca cuenta con varios certificados, con el cumplimiento también de varias normas. Y tenemos la parte, es la marca número 1 vendida en el mercado asiático. Vamos a mostrarle algunas imágenes del equipamiento ya en laboratorios. Como pueden darse cuenta, son equipos robustos que ustedes pueden configurar muy bien dependiendo de sus investigaciones o aplicaciones que ustedes estén elaborando. Y bueno, dentro de nuestros usuarios en México ya tenemos varios equipos instalados en la Universidad de Guadalajara, en la ITESO, en la Facultad de Ingeniería Mecánica y Eléctrica y en la Autónoma de Nuevo León, en la Facultad de Ciencias Físico-Matemáticas, en el Politécnico Nacional, como lo son CECID, tenemos también ahí, vamos a instalar uno próximamente en lo que es Investab, en el Instituto de Física, en la Facultad de Química de la UNAM, en el Instituto de Energías Renovables y en la Autónoma de San Luis Potosí, así como usuarios que son de empresas, principalmente para el área de corrosión. Ya tenemos, como pueden darse cuenta, pues un gran historial con el soporte de que damos tanto la capacitación, la puesta en marcha y también ofrecemos cursos con nuestro especialista de aplicaciones justamente para la parte de el manejo como tal ya de las técnicas electroquímicas, ¿no? Que es lo fundamental para que ustedes puedan sacarle el máximo provecho a su equipo. Participamos en otros tipos de congresos en los cuales también ustedes, nosotros hacemos dinámicas en las cuales pues generalmente a los estudiantes principalmente los apoyamos para que puedan asistir con una cortesía de parte de Anjover, por ejemplo al congreso de electroquímica o algún otro evento en el cual ustedes pueden apoyarse en la formación. Y bueno, si alguno de ustedes requiere alguna cotización, algo más de información, ahí están los números de contacto. También el día de hoy, el día de mañana vamos a estar acá afuera. Traemos unos equipos demo, les podemos mostrar la parte de las configuraciones del equipo, o si alguno de ustedes también desea el software demo, sin ningún costo, se los podemos instalar en sus equipos para que ustedes los vayan revisando. En la página de cortes igualmente se van a poder encontrar el link de descarga gratuita del software en el cual ustedes pueden modificar para justamente ver el alcance de estas técnicas que tienen. No sé si tengan alguna duda, algún comentario.
¿Alguna duda, pregunta? Ahí atrás, sí.
Hola, buenos días. Bueno, en relación a los equipos, ¿tienen algunas garantías o mantenimiento que se les puedan dar?
Sí, nosotros como empresa ubicada acá en México, bueno, en Anjover, damos un año de garantía por defecto de fábrica y la empresa, el fabricante da 2 años. Nosotros damos igualmente el soporte de mantenimiento si se llegue a requerir. Todo lo hacemos desde acá, desde el país, para que no tengan justamente que enviarlo, porque muchas marcas lo que ofrecen es vuelven a mandar su equipo y en el tiempo que tardamos en enviarlo, pues justamente ustedes pierden una gran cantidad de tiempo para seguir ocupando el equipo, pero Anjover sin problema brinda tanto la capacitación, la puesta en marcha, como el soporte postventa.
Muchas gracias. Y bueno, en relación al software, ¿únicamente es en Windows o también hay versión para Linux?
De momento solamente está disponible para versión de Windows. Están trabajando en la versión para los otros
Sistemas operativos.
Los otros sistemas, pero sí, de momento solamente para Windows.
Pues muchas gracias.
¿Alguna otra duda? Yo tengo una chiquita. En cuanto justamente hablando del software, ¿cuántas licencias puede uno disponer?
Como es un software abierto sin licencia, usted puede instalarlo en las computadoras que usted desee. No hay una restricción en número de usuarios.
Ok, perfecto. Y la otra es aproximadamente, más o menos, ¿cuál es el tiempo de obsolescencia en promedio de los equipos? Porque, pues, a fin de cuentas, uno compra un equipo y uno necesita saber en cuánto tiempo la fábrica va a decir, no, ya el equipo ya lo voy a dejar de fabricar.
No, los equipos tienen una duración por fábrica de 10 años, pero son equipos robustos que se han validado y tenemos ya usuarios que justamente compraron equipos mucho antes de que nosotros representáramos la marca aquí, ya llevan más de 15 años libres sin mantenimiento. Sí, son equipos libres sin mantenimiento, la fábrica son 10 años y generalmente ofrece por el momento el soporte todavía, ¿no? A partir de esos 10 años.
Sí, el soporte tengo todavía algunas refacciones, pero ya no lo voy a necesariamente a fabricar, ¿no?
Sí,
lo
que manejamos ahí son generalmente 10 años todavía.
10 años, sí, es que eso es importante, ¿no? Sí, como para saber cuántos años voy a poder utilizar el equipo con soporte técnico. Muy bien, pues si no hay otra duda por ahí, le cedo el micrófono al doctor Hugo, quien quiere ofrecer algunas. Eric. Sí, si quieres después de que mencione algunas palabras, Hugo. Gracias.
Gracias, Eniober, por la presentación. Y yo nada más tomo el micrófono para agradecerles el patrocinio de este evento. Ellos nos apoyaron con muchos materiales y pues muchas gracias por estar presentes. Ahora sí.
Ok, pues muchísimas gracias y a continuación vamos a tener la reunión de CIPOA, algunos participantes, pero los demás pues se va a hacer el tour por CIDETEQ. Entonces quienes hayan confirmado su asistencia al tour, ¿quién nos va a guiar, Eric? Aquí está Oscar y ya también él está. Entonces todos los que gusten dar el tour por CIDETEQ. En 3 minutos estaremos listos. Entonces, mientras tanto, si gustan tomar un poquito más de café, un poquito más de azúcar, porque van a caminar un poquitín. De acuerdo. Gracias.